Hi, it's Tom Maoli, serial entrepreneur, high above the towers of Madison Square Garden. And we're here this week with some special guests, and we're going to talk about debt. We're going to talk about what is good debt, bad debt, personal debt. When do you take on debt as an entrepreneur? And it's such an important issue in business. People don't understand debt. They're scared of debt. And we want to talk about it. We have two special guests this week, too. We're going to bring them on the line now. We have Dan Geltrude, CPA. Dan, are you there, Dan?
I'm here, Tom.
Good. I want to just let everybody out there and all the listeners know, Dan is an expert in financing, accounting, tax topics. Dan is a CPA. He's had guest appearances on Fox News, Sean Hannity, various national radio appearances, is the master of delivering positive financial karma. See it on his website, www.dangeltrude.com. Dan is an expert in accounting, banking, cybersecurity, divorce, economic forecast, family office, financial expert, financial fraud, forensic accounting, human resources. I mean, I could spend the whole hour talking about Dan Geltrude's resume. The guy's amazing. And Dan, we'll talk to the listeners a little bit about debt, because debt is such, we talk all the time about getting out behind the cubicle, getting into business, becoming an entrepreneur, building wealth and financial security for your family. But talk about debt, because there's good debt, bad debt, personal debt, business debt. Talk to a little about it from your standpoint and what you see.
Sure, Tom. Look, if you're going to be an entrepreneur out there, the one thing you can't be afraid of is debt. And the way you have to look at debt to start with, it can be a positive thing. How? You got to look at it from the standpoint of what is going to be your return on investment related to debt. So, real easy example. Guy like you, Tom, I know you do a lot of real estate investing. Can't do real estate investing without taking on debt.
Tons. You can't do it. It's impossible. You can't do real estate investment without debt. I'm a car dealer. Car dealers are burdened with debt. Every car that sits on the lot, people think you own them. They're all floor plan. There's all debt. You can't have those. I can't sell them to the customers unless I have a floor plan, which is debt. Right.
So if we look at it from this standpoint, you can't be in business without debt there. But not everybody has a car dealership. So let's talk about real estate, because so many people want to get involved in real estate. The simple way to look at it is it's got to give you the return on investment that you want. So, for example, if you're going to go out and borrow money, let's say at 5%, because you want to buy yourself, let's say, a rental property. When you do all the calculations, if that property is going to return 15 or 20% on your debt investment, hey, you're using the bank's money to make money. Am I wrong, Tom?
Amen. And you know what? Listen, that's exactly what, I say when banks want to give me money and I can borrow it at 4 and 5% and I can make 15%, that is not risk, that is opportunity.
Sure it is. Absolutely. And that's what the smart investors are doing. Hey, I know you're friends with Donald Trump. That's how he built his real estate empire, on debt.
Yeah,
using the bank's money.
Right. Absolutely. You use the bank's money every time you can. It takes you out of the middle of it. Absolutely. From an accounting standpoint, what about personal debt? Because there's a lot of people that are a lot of people that listen to my show sit there and they're in cubicles. They're working in corporate America. They're dying to get out and do their own thing. They want to get in their own business. And most of them are sitting there saying, how do I get out of debt? What about personal debt? A lot of people pick on personal debt. They run up their credit cards. They over leverage their house. They spend money on vacations. And what about personal debt? What do you feel about that as an accountant?
Well, Tom, that's where we go into the definition of that's bad debt, right? Because it's the same principle. When you're taking out money on your credit card, because let's say you want to buy everybody a really, really nice Christmas present this year, and you're taking on that debt, what's your return on investment? Nothing. It's putting you further in the hole.
Right.
So when you're talking about personal debt, for the most part, that's where I'm looking at it and say, you know what? You really need to stay away from that, particularly credit cards. That's the cardinal sin of debt. In my mind.
Right. Well, we're talking 18, 20%. They're charging 18, 20%. And that's why they can't get out from under that debt, because when they make their monthly payment, they're 10% of it's going towards the principal. The rest is going towards the interest.
Absolutely. That's why the best thing about personal debt is not to be in it in the first place. I think if people follow the rule, I'm taking on debt where am I placing it? That's really the main question. Am I placing it in something that's going to give me a return on my money, or is this going to put me further in the hole?
Right.
If you follow that principle, I think you're okay.
No, I think you're on the money, and clearly you've got the experience. Your resume's there. You're on the money, exactly what you're saying. Talk about, when you get into business debt, what are the tax advantages of a business debt versus a personal debt?
Well, first of all, if you have an unsecured personal debt, Tom, like a credit card, you get no tax benefit from that. However, I know there's been a lot of talk with tax reform, but still, if you have personal debt related to your home, you're still going to have a mortgage interest deduction. All good there. Now, on business, same principle. We're going to invest in business for two reasons. One, because we're going to get a better return on our debt interest rate. Or, as you mentioned with your car business, you need the working capital. You got to go out and borrow the money because seasonality of businesses and those types of things, you need to bridge the gap.
Right.
However, the good news is you get a tax deduction for it. So now you actually have to factor that into your calculation to say, not only do I get a return on my investment, but I'm also getting tax benefits.
Right. So that's what I always say. If the bank wants to, I always say that if the bank wants to give me money at 5% and I can write it off, it's costing me 2.5% from a business standpoint. What about the risk involved in it from a CPA standpoint, from your expertise? I mean, you've been on Fox News, you've been on Sean Hannity. You talk about what's going on with the new tax laws. What about the risk involved? How do you feel about the risk as a CPA?
Well, Tom, like anything else, when you're analyzing risk, you got to say, hey, am I going to be able to pay this back? Because if you can't, you really end up in a big problem there. But look, when people do get in trouble with the banks, when for whatever reason that their projections are not right, that return on investment fails, you know what? You got to sit down with the bank. Most of the time, financial institutions are willing to work with you. You want to know why? Because they don't want a bad debt.
Right. Exactly what I always say.
A little something, right?
Right. It's interesting. It's interesting you say that because you talked about Donald Trump, and obviously he's a personal friend. But you talked about him earlier, and obviously prior to the presidency, and I've had conversations with the guy, and you say when he lost his casinos in Atlantic City, he thought it was the end of the world, and then when he sat down with his bankruptcy lawyers and he analyzed it, he said, you know what, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me because the banks had to work with me. I restructured my debt, and all of a sudden I tripled my cash flow. Right. Made the banks his partners. Right. He made the banks his partners, and he turned the thing around. Well, listen, Dan, I appreciate it. I know your time's limited tonight, but we want to have you back on the show. We're going to have you on as a special guest. I appreciate you calling in, and I appreciate you answering the question for the listeners. We're going to talk to you soon. It's Dan Geltrude, CPA. Dan, we'll talk to you soon.